Hi guys. So I only tend to make models of Skarloey Railway stock during the Audrey Diorama Challenge event. Until now. I was sent a few kits by New Kids on the Block Minibuilds. You'll have seen me building their Talyllyn battery locos a few weeks back. And their models really are top tier. I'm so excited for this. As they're pretty new on the scene, they're still working on things like packaging. In fact, my Claytons were just sent in a plain box. Not that that matters. But these coaches have been upgraded to fancy labels, and some packing filler, and even a cool little Minibuilds logo sticker, which is extra fun. It's like getting a new iPhone. Oh, Minibuild also provide wheel sets with their kits, which really helps the build along, and as you'll see later, their axle boxes have been fine-tuned to perfectly fit these wheels. Okay, the coaches don't actually need any work at all, so they're glued straight onto cotton buds ready to paint. They're well designed, and the seating components are separate to the body itself, which really helps with the painting. Though, because they're resin, they don't actually weigh much, and the airbrush will blow them away if I try to paint them loose, so I'll stick them onto a piece of cardboard with some masking tape. I was just going to paint these things up as standard coaches, but then I decided it would be fun to make them look tired and in need of an overhaul. So, the first coat is a typical spray of grey primer. And as a rule of thumb, I tend to use grey primer for everything aside from red pieces, and those I'd use red oxide primer. To get my worn finish, the entire coach and its seating pieces will be painted up in a sun-bleached wood effect, and that starts with earth brown. The airbrush will help get a lovely thin finish on the paint, so there's minimal chance of losing the surface details on the model, such as the wooden slats. And that goes for the seating as well. Painting these by hand would be fiddly, time consuming, and probably look terrible at the end. I also only need to spray these from above, as it won't be possible for an actual human to see the undersides of them, and that makes spraying them much quicker. So I'm glad that I decided that would be the case. Clever me. Giving them an hour or two to dry, remembering that these are acrylic so it's a nice quick dry time compared to enamel, I can begin to weather the wood. It's a two-stage process that I use. The first is this, a dry brushing of light antique white. You can see how fast this method is. Though, to be fair, it is pretty difficult to get a good job on the interior as the walls stop you getting an even brushing over the width of the floor. That won't ruin the finish though, so I'm not letting it upset me. Too much doing that these days anyway. I think I'm using too much paint on this, but as the wood colours are so saturated, I'm hoping to dull the whole thing down later on. And even though the main body colour will be blue, I need to weather the entire model with this technique, and I shall explain why in a minute. With the wooden surface finish for now, I can apply my secret weapon, the paint chipping spray. It's also important that the chipping fluid is given time to fully cure, which is like an hour or so judging by the feel of the model after an hour or so. I want the interior of the coach to stay wooden and unpainted, so I'll carefully mask it off. Because the back supports are being part of the main body print, this is best done in a series of smaller pieces of masking tape to negotiate them. And then onto the blue. I had to watch my videos back to find out what blue to use on these, as I wanted it to match the blue I used on the TR Open coach that I made. It's actually really useful spending every spare minute I have at home editing and uploading videos, as they act like a reference for my own modelling techniques, which I would definitely forget. The blue's dry and I'm keen to paint chip, so I'll rip the masking tape off so I can get started. This is a simple process. Basically, the paint chipping fluid is activated when water is applied, which means if you scrub the surface of the model with a sopping wet paintbrush, it starts to act on the fluid below the top coat. And the top coat starts to chip away, like magic. This is obviously then going to be a personal taste how far you take this technique. But I'm really going to push it on these coaches as I want it to look like they're well past their best. The fact that water activates the stuff means that if you did a bit on your model and then came back a few days later and you didn't think it was quite enough, then you're in luck. Just add water and do it again. It may look like I'm just doing this at random, but I am trying to get more of the paint taken away where feet would catch the coach sides as passengers get in and out of them. I think that'll be enough for now, so I'll move on to the black buffer beams and underframes. I was a bit nervous that the masking tape would pull the paint off, as the chipping fluid is still sitting below the blue that's left on the model, but hopefully it'll be okay. Well, it is okay, otherwise I wouldn't show you the video. The buffer beams sit higher than the frames, so the masking is done in a few separate pieces to negotiate the shape. The black being sprayed on is a primer. This covers really well, and I always struggle to spray behind the rear of the buffers themselves. In fact, it can help to do this in a couple of coats. I super dry the coats with a hairdryer to speed through this process in one sitting. That's the paint pretty much finished, and the last piece of the puzzle is the black wash. This is going to be pretty heavy on these coaches to help with the neglected look I'm after. It's also the second and final part of weathering the wood on the interior of the coach. You'll see as I start to add the black, it almost begins to tint the finish of the wood. Obviously I'll begin to wash this down with clean water like I usually do, but even with thinning down, the black still alters the final tone of the wooden parts. And there you go, the coach is now dry and you can see how different the wood looks. Not bad for such a quick method. And with that, I can put them together, meaning the seating can go in. Minibuilds have designed these with super tight clearance, so much that the seats will actually stay in place with just the friction of the coach sides. Either way, I will add a little drop of glue to the middle support to hold them in solid. Forever. I can add the wheel sets in now, and again this really doesn't require any sort of modification, they pop straight in. Though I did add a little drop of oil to the pinpoints on the axles, but to be fair I do that with any wheel sets I add to a model, to help it roll freely. One thing I should have added before weathering was the coach numbers, and whilst I was aiming for a realistic approach to Skarloey Railway, as is standard for me, I want to strongly relate to the books and stories, so these coaches are now going to be numbered 11, 12 and 13, which I believe are correct for Ada, Mabel and Jane. Correct me if I'm wrong on that though. I'm using water slide decals, and these go on in the same way as the lining on the engines. Decal fix on the surface, and once the number has been soaked in water, it will release from the backing, which can be dropped into position on the model. After fine tuning the position, I like to roll a cotton bud over the decal to aid adhesion to the paint. Oh, I need couplings as well. I will eventually fit these with Greenwich couplings to match the Talyllyn stock I'm building, as both the Talyllyn and Skarloey stock will run over Nangwernal at exhibitions, but I haven't made any up recently, so I'll just pop in the commercially available couplings that I've been taking off the other coaches. And there we go, more Skarloey stock, which probably came as a surprise to you actually. The glaringly obvious missing thing here are the passengers, so I might need to make a little trip to model you when I'm at the Rapido event in a few weeks' time. Oh, by the way, I'm at the Rapido event in a few weeks' time. I'll be there Friday and Saturday with Corish, so come and say hi and see the layout if you live down south or you just love to spend hours in your car. I won't bang on much more about Minibuilds, you get the idea, they really are producing fantastic models, and I can't wait to see what else they come up with. The coaches run well, they look good, and they don't cost an arm and a leg. I was actually sent a few packs, though the others are modified to suit the actual Penryn or Talyllyn X Penryn coaches, so that's one for another day. If you want to have a go at these, I've added their website link in the description again. I'm really liking the look of this realistic Skarloey stuff on the layout, but I really need to get round to the rest of the scenics, as the bare brown base ruins my photos and videos. Anyway, enough about Minibuilds and how amazing their coaches are and how you should go and buy some and support a new cottage manufacturer to make them produce more models, and that you should get their stickers on the layout so other people can see them at exhibitions and spot them. And yeah, that's enough of that. Cheers.